There's a particular kind of silence you carry, not the peaceful kind, but the kind built from years of watching everything and saying nothing. You notice the shift in someone's tone before they hear it themselves. You sense tension in a room before a single word is spoken. You feel danger, disappointment, and disapproval, not when they happen, but before they happen. And the world calls that intuition. But you know better. It's not intuition. It's survival. You didn't become quiet because you're meek. You became quiet because you learned very early that the loudest people aren't the strongest. They're often the most chaotic. And silence became your shelter. You didn't choose invisibility. You adapted to it. You mastered smallness the way others learn a language. Every pause, every breath, every micro-expression around you became information. But here's the paradox. The very thing that once kept you safe, your quietness, your observation, your restraint, is now the thing that keeps you at a distance from the life you want. Your quiet power protects you, but it isolates you. It grants insight, but denies connection. It makes you strong, but hard to reach. So today, we enter the shadowy territory of that paradox. The world misunderstands quiet people, assuming their silence means softness or timidity. But there is a darker, deeper truth. Quiet people aren't weak. They're forged, tempered by the emotional weather they survived. And their power, your power, is real. But it has rules. 3 laws to be precise. And when you understand them, you begin to understand yourself. To understand quiet power, we need to step back into its origins. Not the behavior, but the blueprint. Quiet power is seldom innate. It's shaped, carved, pressed into a person by early psychological experiences. Let's break down 3 crucial concepts. Concept 1. Hypervigilance. This is not simply being observant. Hypervigilance is the nervous system's long-term adaptation to unpredictability. Maybe you grew up with a parent whose mood changed without warning. Maybe you lived in a home where love felt conditional. Warm one moment, cold the next. Your brain became a radar system, always scanning, always anticipating. This constant, silent monitoring trains a person to listen more than speak, watch more than reveal, predict more than express. Quiet power begins here. In learning the world is safer when observed from the shadows. Concept 2. Emotional neglect schema. This is one of the deepest psychological imprints. Emotional neglect isn't loud. It isn't violent. It's the absence of being seen. Children who endure this learn a painful rule. My feelings are inconvenient. My needs are invisible. My voice is too much. So they shrink themselves, mute themselves, become the easy one. This lack of emotional mirroring builds a self-concept where visibility equals risk. Quiet power emerges as protection. If no one sees me, no one can dismiss me. Concept 3. Avoidant attachment. Not because you don't want closeness, but because closeness once hurt. Avoidance strategies become internal commandments. They don't depend too much. They don't need too loudly. They don't reveal unless necessary. They don't give anyone the power to wound you. This attachment style creates adults who speak little but think deeply, who feel intensely but show very little, who crave connection but build emotional architectures designed to avoid it. These 3 concepts, hypervigilance, emotional neglect schema, and avoidant attachment, reshape not only your behavior, but your nervous system, your identity, and your relational blueprint. They create a person who commands power through subtlety, through presence rather than volume, through restraint rather than performance. But this power has a cost. Quiet power looks graceful from the outside, but internally, it's heavy. There is what I call invisible grief, a sorrow for the parts of you that never got to develop out loud. Quiet people often walk through life with a sophisticated emotional mask. Even they don't realize they're wearing it. You sacrificed authenticity for acceptance. You chose safety over self-expression. You learned to be low maintenance because you believed your needs were burdens. As Jung wrote, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Quiet power avoids that terror. It chooses manageability over mess. It chooses observation over vulnerability. It chooses control over closeness. And underneath it all lies one core fear. The fear that if you speak your truth, someone will walk away. This fear shows up everywhere. In relationships, you apologize for things that aren't your fault. In conflict, you shut down instead of defending your boundaries. In daily moments, where you rehearse conversations you'll never actually say out loud, your silence becomes a shield, and also a cage. This is the emotional weight of quiet power. The constant calculation, the unspoken grief, the heavy vigilance that never fully turns off. But it's not permanent. Quiet power can evolve. And that evolution begins with understanding how it manifests now. In your adult life, quiet power isn't passive. It's strategic. But the strategy came from survival, not choice. Let's look at how this childhood adaptation shows up now. Relationships. You might choose partners who demand little. Fear being too much emotionally. Avoid conflicts to keep peace. Stay silent even when hurt. Bond through caretaking instead of vulnerability. Quiet power here becomes emotional self-abandonment disguised as harmony. You might do excellent work but avoid recognition. Hesitate to ask for promotions. Stay in roles that undervalue you. Become the reliable one but never the visible one. Quiet power here becomes competence without voice. Self-worth. You might feel guilty for resting. Feel uncomfortable receiving attention. Believe you must earn your place. See yourself as replaceable. And minimize your accomplishments. Quiet power here becomes internal shrinking. Boundaries. You might let things slide to avoid conflict. Tolerate disrespect in silence. Struggle to say no. Detach emotionally when overwhelmed. Choose distance over confrontation. Quiet power here becomes self-protection by withdrawal. Emotional regulation. You might hold everything in until you mentally shut down. Intellectualize your emotions instead of feeling them. Keep yourself busy to avoid vulnerability. Numb with routines or work. Overthink as a form of emotional control. Quiet power here becomes emotional suppression. Internal identity. You might feel you're living at 60% of who you are. Sense a locked room inside your personality. Show different versions of yourself to different people. Feel misunderstood but unable to correct it. Fear your authentic self may not be accepted. Quiet power here becomes a quiet internal exile. But here's the turning point. These are not personality flaws. They are coping mechanisms. Adaptive, intelligent, and deeply human. And the moment you witness these patterns, without shaming yourself, you begin the unlearning process. Quiet power doesn't need to disappear. It needs to evolve. Refined into something that protects without isolating, observes without erasing, and strengthens without silencing. And that brings us to healing. Quiet power becomes healthy when it becomes conscious. When silence becomes a choice, not a reflex, not a defense, not a scar. Here are the 3 pillars of quiet power healing. 1. Inner child reparenting. This means offering yourself the safety you never had. Asking, what did I need that I never received? And learning to give it, gently, consistently, daily. Your inner child doesn't need more discipline. They need permission. Permission to feel, to speak, to exist without shrinking. 2. Shadow work. Quiet people bury enormous emotional archives. Shadow work means opening those drawers with compassion, not judgment. Ask yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I let myself be fully seen? Often, your greatest fear reveals your greatest wound. And your greatest wound reveals your path to liberation. 3. Nervous system regulation. Quiet power is often an overactive survival mode. Regulation practices. Breath work, grounding, body scanning, slow somatic unwinding. Teach your body that it's allowed to soften. Because softness isn't weakness. Softness is the courage to stop bracing for impact. A final truth. Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Quiet power suffers internally from battles that never have to be fought. So here is your affirmation. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to speak. You are allowed to be fully, messily, unmistakably human. Quiet power is not meant to silence you. It is meant to anchor you, to ground you, to steady you, to help you move intentionally through a loud and frantic world. But the goal isn't to be fixed. The goal is to become whole. If this message connected with you, share it with someone who lives quietly but feels deeply. And subscribe if you want more content that speaks to the parts of you the world rarely sees. Your quiet power is real. Now it's time to use it consciously, not to hide, but to rise.